welcome to this edition of the Head to Head Podcast. I'm your host, Cam McKinney. This is the 28th episode of the Head to Head Podcast. And in this edition of the Head to Head Podcast, I will be talking all about James Harden of the Houston Rockets. James Harden is coming off one of the best weeks I've ever seen a basketball player have. Let's talk about some of the accomplishments James Harden's had this week. 8 shots. He had 8 shots and got 40 points. That's pretty miraculous, if I do say so myself. And then he hit a game-winning shot against the Golden State Warriors over Draymond Green and Steph Curry, 2 of the other top 10 or 20 players in the league. This is the best week James Harden has had as a basketball player, and that says a lot coming from a guy who's already won an MVP last year and was runner-up 2 years in a row before that. This guy is a monster, and I don't think that he gets enough credit for what he is. He is like the Alex Ovechkin of basketball. He's great on offense and not so great on the other side of the floor. It's true, he's not a good defender, but when you watch what he does on offense, the best thing I can say about James Harden is there's no player in NBA history like him that I watch his game and I go, I've never seen... I'm going to pay the ultimate compliment to James Harden. I think he plays the game smarter than most people. I think I've seen documentaries about Larry Bird. Obviously, I'm not old enough to have seen Larry Bird, but from what I've seen, Larry Bird's not the athletic talent. He doesn't dunk the ball. He's not the greatest, athlete of all time, talent-wise, but his mind, I think James Harden's mind is on that same level. There's got to be something that he's getting 27 free throws and other guys aren't. I mean, it's just that. Kobe Bryant wasn't that good at free throws or getting to the line. LeBron James is great at getting to the line, but he doesn't hit as many. I feel like James Harden knows his game better than any NBA player in the league right now. He knows his game plan. He knows what he's going to do. It's all calculated, and he feels to me to be the smartest player when it comes to his own game. Again, I don't know him outside of the court, but watching him play, I'm going to say, I think he's a basketball genius. He's discovered the fact that he's not the fastest guy. He's not John Wall. He can't attack the basket like Russell Westbrook. He has become this version of a guy who's playing at such a slow pace, but yet he's dominating in the same way that Giannis Antetokounmpo is dominating basketball. James Harden is dominating it in the exact opposite way. And to me, that is fascinating that in this world of athletes and guys like LeBron and guys like Giannis, that there's this guy in James Harden. He's not even the best three-point shooter like Steph or Clay. He's found his little mid-range game. He can get to the basket and score, but that's not his strong suit, but he's so good. He's so good at getting contact, hitting the shot, going to the free throw line, and ending up with 40 points at the end of the night. And that is a talent that is so rare that I think he's better than most. I think he's a top 3 player. I think you can really make the argument he's the best player in the NBA. I put him way ahead of Anthony Davis when it comes to his overall impact. And I know we say Anthony Davis is a big man. Anthony Davis, I believe if I put James Harden on the Pelicans and I put Anthony Davis on the Rockets, James Harden would win more with the Pelicans team and I think the guards have more impact on the games today, so I'm going to go with James Harden. I believe his impact is overall better. I also think James Harden gets it to me. He gets what his game is. I think he gets his weaknesses, but he masters his strengths, which is what we all try to do as humans, right? He knows what he's good at, and he's improving on it. I mean, there's so many great moments with James Harden scoring this past couple of years. I think he's overachieved what we all thought his career was going to be. So that's another reason why I don't quite understand the James Harden hate that's sometimes out there because of his lack of defense. Let's look back at James Harden. He's in Oklahoma City. He was a first-round draft pick out of Arizona State to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I never had a second thought about him until he started to play, and they went to the NBA Finals with Durant, Westbrook, and Harden coming off the bench. But then he gets traded to Houston, and I go, what? The Houston Rockets I knew at the time they were desperate for an NBA All-Star. They were playing with guys like Shane Battier and Yao Ming was out of the league, and they had Kevin Martin, but he's no James Harden. But I was like, to pay $80 million to a guy who you've never seen be great was one of the riskier moves I've seen. I was a James Harden fan. I thought he was like Manu Ginobili. No, he's more on the Kobe Bryant level than the Manu Ginobili level right now. I mean, that's impressive in and of itself. You could not have told me that guy in Oklahoma City was going to win an MVP and finish second in back-to-back years. And since he's become a Houston Rocket, he is one of the most consistent players in the game. His stats, the games he's played, he's never hurt. He's an Iron Man on the court. I don't know. And the way his game has changed over the years, the first few years in Houston, it's all jump shots, it's all scoring. You're like, oh my God, this guy's a ball hog. And then Mike D'Antoni comes in, and I know Mike D'Antoni is great with guards. James Harden leads the league in assists one year. There's so much to his game. His passing is so underrated. His passing, I get it, he couldn't get along with Dwight Howard. But guess what? Clint Capella is doing what I think Dwight Howard should have been doing his whole career. Clint Capella is the better version of Dwight Howard. And I know that's weird to say because Dwight Howard was like, what, an MVP, an all-star, one of the best centers ever. Clint Capella knows how to play with James Harden, and James Harden knows how to play with Clint Capella. That's the best. We're watching what the best version of the James Harden-Dwight Howard combination should have been with James Harden and Clint Capella. He is so good at passing to Capella, and all last offseason we were like, James Harden is not going to be able to fit with Chris Paul. Then all of a sudden they have one of the best years in Houston Rockets history and get within a game of the NBA Finals, which they would have gotten to if Chris Paul had not gotten hurt. And you still want to talk about the downsides of James Harden's game? He is able to play with so many different players and adapt his overall game. Just look at the other point guards he's played with in his career that he's made better. Jeremy Lin was better in Houston. Also, Patrick Beverley. Who was Patrick Beverley before Houston? And now Patrick Beverley's not even an afterthought, really, offensively. James Harden was able to make those guys better. I believe his ability to adapt to his teammates is another thing that he's not given credit for at all because it didn't work out with Dwight Howard. You know who it also didn't work out with Dwight Howard? Kobe Bryant and so many other guys now. Dwight Howard has become a traveling circus, and James Harden has become a top free player in the league. We need to take notice of James Harden. We need to take notice of what James Harden is doing on the basketball court. The beard is interesting in and of itself. There's a guy under there that's weird, but his game is insane. It is out of this world good. His offensive maturity is insane. 27 free throws. I know most people are saying, well, this guy is playing, he's a total flopper. He's playing smart. He had the best quote the other day when talking about his game. He said, don't foul him because he knows the rules. He's playing within the rules that they've made, and he's being smarter about it than most people. I mean, he's one of my overall favorite athletes to watch play basketball. He is insanely good. His shot over Draymond and Steph the other night was so good. I can't say that many good things about James Harden, but I will say I do understand that there is a downside. I do know that this guy hasn't been the best playoff performer thus far. But he is the best thing that could have happened to the Houston Rockets, who were desperate to find an all-star player. And let's look back at this. Out of all of these guards who have gotten these big contracts, which ones have worked out more? Westbrook is still, he's Westbrook. You don't know how that's going to work out. The team has 2 stars, but is Oklahoma City Thunder anywhere near as good as I believe Houston is? No. Then John Wall, the mistake the Wizards made by paying John Wall more is ridiculous. See, John Wall has not lived up to the hype. James Harden's contract is it's worked. It has worked, and that is one of the best compliments I can give to James Harden. He is a full-out max player. He is a full-out max player, and he is in my top 3, or he should be in everyone's top 5. These lists that say James Harden is not a top 5 player are not watching basketball right. He is the guy on a team. Since they've lost Chris Paul this year, he has gone in insane mode. to the likes of which we haven't seen since Kobe scored 50 and then 81 in the same week, or there was weeks where Kobe would score 50 and 60 in the same week. I mean, these are insane performances back to back to back, the likes of which we haven't seen since Kobe Bryant. LeBron doesn't go on these type of stretches. LeBron will have great games and then it'll be a while. James Harden is having great game after great game after great game, and I think we should all take notice of that. He is a master of offense. He's truly dominating the game of basketball. And to me, that is a good thing. I know he's not a two-way player. I know he's not Kawhi Leonard. But I'd rather James Harden than Kawhi Leonard. I just would. There's something special about James Harden's game that I know Kawhi can defend. And I know other guys are great two-way players. Would you take Paul George or James Harden? I mean, I'd take James Harden. I just would. Someone's offensive game can be so good that it outweighs their defensive thing. His game is efficient, too. It's not mellow-style basketball. He's dominating in a different type of way, and it is fascinating to watch. Again, this sounds like a James Harden Loves Fest podcast, and I know a lot of people are going to have problems with that. I'm not going to talk about how bad he is on defense, because I know he's bad on defense, but I also know other guys aren't so good on defense. I love Kyrie Irving. He's not much of a defender. I know Steph Curry. He's not much of a defender. I know it looks like those two guys are trying harder than James Harden because he has got that look. I don't judge effort. I really don't. He's putting up the stats. He's dazzling me on offense. He's obviously putting an effort in his basketball game. Maybe he's just not good at defense. Can we just take that? And I don't want to talk about years and years and years of James Harden memes online or watching videos of him not playing defense. I admit they're funny, but I think we're really ignoring what's making this guy special somehow. I don't understand. You know what I mean? Like, when Jeremy Lin was dominating in New York for that week, he didn't play any defense, and we still cared. James Harden is doing that year after year after year, and yet we care about his defense. I guess I have a problem with when we pick and choose who plays defense and who doesn't, because the truth of the matter is fans don't really know who's playing defense well. We don't. We can pretend like we know Kawhi Leonard's a great defender, and he probably is by all metrics and by all things. But we're just saying that because other experts have called Kawhi Leonard a great defense. As a fan of basketball, I don't know who's a great defender and who's not. I don't know Steph Curry can get a lot of steals. I don't know if he's just getting those steals because Draymond and Clay. I don't know who's a great defender and I don't know who isn't. I know there are some times where the guy goes right past the other guy and James Harden looks away. We could do that about any player that's small. Isaiah Thomas played zero defense, yet he had one of the best seasons I've ever seen the Celtics have. I have no problem with the guards who don't play deep. He is the best offensive player in basketball right now. James Harden, to me, is by far the best offensive basketball player right now. If I had to pick one guy that I needed to score 40 that night, I'm picking James Harden. I am. His passing, his scoring, and his overall mentality, his pace of play, I also think is effective. Where you have guys like John Wall playing fast, I think that James Harden, slow pace, does a little dribble thing, step back three, that's a killer. And his mid-range game is insanely good. I think his style of play is more effective, and I think more people should actually be trying to copy his style of play. He's not the most athletic person in the world, but man, he is really good at basketball. And again, I'm paying this ultimate compliment to him. I think it's Larry Bird-like, his mentality. I think he's super smart. I think he's one of the smartest players in the league today. I think he's LeBron James smart. Remember when LeBron proclaimed himself to be a basketball genius? That's what I think of James Harden. I think he's probably a basketball genius overall. I think his know-how of the game is really good. He's a stellar basketball player that we need to take more notice of. He's won an MVP. When Steph Curry won back-to-back MVPs, which I think he 100% deserved, did we think Steph Curry was playing great defense those 2 years? No. So I don't really know why this guy gets the hate on, because he doesn't play defense well. Another thing I'll say about James Harden is that I think he knows how to entertain. I think he is a master of the entertainment also. His step back stare down of Wesley Johnson is the best basketball play of last year. How he just looks at him. No, he could have taken that free minutes ago, and he waits for Wesley Johnson to get up. Is one of the best moments of 2018. How can you not watch that play and just be like, wow, this guy knows how good at basketball he is? I mean, that's such a great play. I've watched that video more times than I can count. That is one of the all-time great basketball plays. The ego in that guy with that weird beard that he hasn't shaved in years, there's just something about him that I just find fascinating. He doesn't do a lot of interesting interviews. I don't know a lot about James Harden, the person. I just know about his play because I've seen him play so many times. And I just think he is so interesting on the offensive end. That play, let's think about this. He could have taken that free within 2 minutes of that play. Not even like seconds of that play. He waits for Wesley Johnson to get up and knocks it down. And then a couple nights ago, he hits a similar type shot off of Draymond and Steph. Draymond, former defensive player of the year, and Steph Curry. Again, I don't know if Steph Curry plays great defense, but he hits that miraculous shot over the Golden State Warriors. James Harden is entertaining as one player could possibly be. There are only 3 players in this league that I think I personally would take over James Harden if I were starting a franchise. That's LeBron, that's Steph, and that's Kevin Durant. And I would have to think about the Kevin Durant thing because I think Kevin Durant's persona is getting a little bit annoying. But I understand he's 7 feet tall and he can shoot the ball. So let's think about the guys I'm not putting ahead of James Harden. I'm not putting Anthony Davis ahead of James Harden. I'm not putting Anthony Davis ahead of James Harden. And in no world am I putting Russell Westbrook ahead of James Harden. Because I think as smart as James Harden plays, and I think he's calculated, I think Russell Westbrook sometimes plays out of control. And I think that's what I see the difference of the two. James Harden seems to be a master and always in control. And I think, to me, as great as Russell Westbrook is, and I love the triple-double thing, and I love his overall play, and I love his attitude towards the game, probably more than I love James Harden's attitude towards the game. But James Harden, always in control. Russell Westbrook, always out of control. I want the guy who's in control in those moments. I want the assassin who knows that Wesley Johnson's going to get back up and knocks it down. I want the guy who can hit the game winner against the Golden State Warriors. I think James Harden is more reliable than Russell Westbrook. And I also think James Harden is probably, I think James Harden plays better with others than Russell Westbrook did. Like, this statement you might disagree with. I think if Russell Westbrook were the one who got traded, James Harden and Kevin Durant might still be in Oklahoma City Thunder. I think playing with Russell Westbrook drove Kevin Durant up a wall that we quite don't understand. I think if it were Ibaka, Durant, Harden, those 3 would still be together. Now all of them are on different teams except Westbrook. I think there's something to that. I think there's a reason he's the one man left. And quite frankly, I think Russell Westbrook wanted it that way, that he's the one man left. I think Russell Westbrook wants to be a one-man show, and I think James Harden is more willing to let a Chris Paul enter the realm. Listen, you can make the argument that Russell Westbrook's playing better with Paul George because I think he knows he's 1A and Paul George is 1B. When there's a Kevin Durant or a James Harden, if James Harden would have been as good in Oklahoma City Thunder, you would have questions about who's the 1A. I think Russell Westbrook is loving basketball right now because he knows he's the 1A. James Harden is willing to be 1B to Chris Paul's 1A sometimes, and vice versa. That's what was so good about LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. They sometimes knew who had to be the number 1 alpha dog. I think Russell Westbrook quite doesn't know when to not be the alpha dog in the center of attention. I'm just putting that out there. I think James Harden knows that better. So I'm not taking any of those guys ahead of James Harden. I don't see how you could take Anthony Davis ahead of James Harden. In the game where the guards are dominating, and this guy is clearly dominating, and Anthony Davis is just putting up huge stats and no win results. You can say the same about Harden, but the 40-point triple-doubles are leading to victories. I think the guy knows how to play winning basketball. better than Anthony Davis. And at some point that has to be a measure of it. If all of their stats look nice, I have to look at the guys who are winning. And so far, the guys who are winning to me most in basketball are LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and James Harden. They are winning. And Chris Paul, I'll put in that. Chris Paul would be in my top 10 still. Those guys are winning. I can't keep saying that the best players are the ones who aren't winning basketball games, which I think is a really weird part of this discussion. Kawhi Leonard definitely wins basketball games. He's in my top 10. I'm not picking Kawhi Leonard ahead of James Harden, though. I'm just not. I think Kawhi was the MVP of that finals, but I think sometimes we think of him as the best player on the Spurs during that run, and he wasn't. There was still Tony Parker. There was still Tim Duncan at some level or another. There were other guys. He dominated that finals, but he didn't dominate that whole season. If Kawhi Leonard wins an NBA Finals with the Toronto Raptors, he's going to go way ahead of this list. But I also think there's this factor that nobody's really talking about with Kawhi Leonard. He gave up on the Spurs. He gave up on the Spurs. James Harden has not given up on the Rockets yet, and that he's probably not going to. I just think there's something with Kawhi Leonard that I just don't like. And I also like James Harden's game better. I think he's more interesting, he's more entertaining, he's just overall more my style. I fully understand with people if you like Kawhi Leonard ahead of James Harden. I totally get that. I'm just not one of those people. I think what Kawhi Leonard did to the Spurs is such a Dwight Howard move that I'm not the biggest fan right now. But I'll get back to it at some point. I just think this guy, James Harden, is not appreciated for his time. When in the league in the 90s, there were so many guys who were kind of like him who were getting credit and they weren't being called bad defenders. I really don't understand the bad defenders thing with James Harden. I think his offense is so good. And again, I keep saying this again and again. I think he plays in control. I think he knows what he's doing. I think he's one of the smarter basketball players ever. I think he's the type of athlete we should root for more. He's not a bust. He's gone far and beyond what we ever thought he was going to be. If no one believed that the guy who was from the Oklahoma City Thunder was traded to the Rockets, that he would go on to win an MVP and finish second in back-to-back years. We can say whether or not he's a true winner until he gets the NBA Finals. I think he's going to get an NBA Finals with this. This could be the year, honestly. The Warriors don't look that so great. The Celtics have their ups and downs. I still believe Houston is the second best team in the West. There's no one who could tell me otherwise. They're starting to get it going. I think when they get Chris Paul back, he'll fit in right with the mix. Heck, Austin Rivers is even contributing to the Rockets. This might be the year that we anoint James Harden as the best basketball player in the world, and it might be rightly so, because to me, he's either 1 or 2 on that list right now of this season, and you can't for the life of God tell me that this year he is not your MVP. Right now, he has got to be MVP from where the Rockets started. You can say that was his fault, but guess what an MVP does? He gets his team going. He is going on like an Hakeem Olajuwon type run with these Rockets that, again, they haven't seen since Hakeem. That is the type of things James Harden is doing, and that is special, and that should be recognized. Thanks again for listening to this edition of the Head to Head Podcast. I'm Cam McKinney. There will be a new episode of the Head to Head Podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and on iTunes. Thanks again for listening.